Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the school committee on an item that is not already on tonight's agenda? Moving along to the consent agenda, could we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion, any items that would like to be removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None. Thank you. Sometimes I have nothing under chairperson's remarks. Tonight I have several things under chairperson's remarks. First of all, perhaps one of the most pleasant, really? Mary and Suzanne, could you come up? This is the last meeting for both Mary and Suzanne. They have both been on the school committee for very many years and have done wonderful work for us. So it's time to give them their parting gifts. I want the yellow one, Mary. So thank you very much. It's very important that you get the one you want because they're very different. The next item I want to review briefly is the member attendance, school committee member attendance. And I asked if we could have this list compiled to show the attendance for subcommittee meetings, full committee meetings, as well as the district communication committee meetings. And the reason for that is because I'd like to include this in our self-evaluation this year. And there were purposely no names on the list because that's not the point. The point is just to see what it is. If anyone would like to know what your own attendance record is, we can certainly give you that information. There are also many, many reasons why people miss meetings. Sometimes it's illness, family emergencies, all kinds of things. But nevertheless, attendance is an important factor because we're elected to represent our constituents. And if we're not here, then we don't represent them as we should. So that's just for your information right now, but it will be talked about more when we get to the self-evaluation. I'm going to wait another few minutes to see if your colleagues get here. So I'm going to now move on to the student representative report. Shannon?
Hi, everyone. Today is Wednesday, April 8th, and despite tight night snow, it is beginning to feel like spring. It looks like the athletic fields will be ready within the next few weeks. Almost all of the spring sports teams will be traveling to Martha's Vineyard this coming Sunday, where they will participate in a series of games followed by a barbecue on the island. Triton athletes are looking forward to kicking off their seasons with some new out-of-league competition and enjoying the sunshine. Yesterday, registered members of the junior class participated in the Credit for Life Fair, an annual event which allows students to build financial management skills and develop their understanding of the working world. The program was sponsored by the Institution for Savings Bank and included students from Newburyport, Ipswich, and Pentucket as well. I chose writing as my occupation and ended up living in a one-bedroom apartment, driving a used car with little money to spare. So for some of us, it was definitely a reality check. Nonetheless, I believe we all got a lot out of it. The junior class has also been taking part in a new community service plan during their advisories, in which each group has chosen a volunteer organization to get involved in, both in and out of school. Many students chose local charity institutions, including the Pettingale House in Salisbury and our Neighbors Table in Newburyport. Tomorrow, on April 9th, there will be a parent meeting for those interested in Triton's Early College Opportunity Program through Northern Essex Community College. This academic plan will be available to next year's juniors, and students enrolled will receive a reduced tuition rate in both high school and college credit. There is an early release on Friday, April 10th, for professional development, and grades for the third quarter will close at the end of the day. Next Thursday, April 15th, there will be an 8th grade parent information night in which incoming freshmen and their parents will have the opportunity to ask teachers any additional questions about the high school. I've been reminded to note the next Thursday is also tax day. Next Friday, April 16th, students involved in the French exchange program will be traveling to France to visit the friends they made in the fall and to explore parts of both the city and countryside with their French teachers. They will return on Monday, April 27th. The Drama and Arts Department will also be departing Friday for a brief trip to New York City, where they will view a play, stay at a hotel, and tour Times Square. On Friday evening, there will be a coffee with the principal at 6, followed by a parent presentation on social media and networking at 6:30. Mr. Jared Chin, who will be leading this presentation, is also the founder of Triton's MVP Bystander Program, which I joined earlier this year. You'll be hearing more about this tonight from some of the group's student leaders. And then from Monday, April 20th to Friday, April 24th, all schools in the district will be closed for spring break. We return on Monday, April 27th, which means seniors will only have 5 short weeks remaining to their high school careers. AP exams begin on Monday, May 4th, and the next committee meeting is on Wednesday, May 6th. Please ask any questions you may have. Thank you.
Any questions?
Just wondering if that one-bedroom apartment's going to change your mind about being a writer.
I'm going to try and not let it discourage me, but that was a bit of a wake-up call, I will say.
Could I take advantage of the report to just mention the fact that the leadership of the Institution for Savings were present at Tuesdays, yesterday's?
For the
I've lost trace of time this week. It was yesterday?
Yes.
Only yesterday. We had a busy yesterday. Kim Rock was there, as she always is, and it's an indicator of how important the bank feels that this opportunity to present the real world. A garret in Paris might be quite cheap if you think about it. Anyway, I just want to express my thanks to the Institution for Savings, not just for what they do on this occasion, and it must involve a huge amount of organisation to get so many volunteers to come and do the work. It's great to have an organisation working in the community.
Suzanne?
Can I just add that I work in a district that the kids actually come to Triton, and it was very well received. They're super excited about going there, and when they came back, they were all talking about it. So from a school district, different district, they had a great time too. So thank you to this district for that.
Thank you, Suzanne. Any other questions for Shannon? Thank you. Next item on our agenda regards the FY16 operating budget, and as you know, we invited the state representatives to come and meet with us to discuss the operating budget in ways in which you might be able to either answer some questions and or help us influence some of the decisions that are about to be made. This was a very, very difficult year for this school district, particularly, for all school districts, but this one particularly. And we have been, for several years, saying that the burden on the towns has been increased because the amount of funding coming from the state has decreased, and we are to the point now where we have to do something because we can't continue on this way. So we need some predictability as far as planning. There are certain things that can be perhaps influenced in the immediate future, and there are other issues that require legislation that are going to take a little bit more time. So we all have been given a list of talking points, suggestions kind of reminding us about some of the issues that we want to make sure we cover. So is there anybody on the committee that would like to start off the questions discussion? Dina?
Thank you, Deb. Thank you, gentlemen, for attending tonight. It's important that you be here, and I appreciate you taking the time to meet with us tonight. One issue that's near and dear to my heart is regional transportation. And I'm asking you to remember that regional districts are a different animal from municipalities, and that truly a cut in regional transportation is a cut to education for our districts. And I don't think that's always made clear. And it's something that's very important, and with the transportation being at a 68% reimbursement rate right now, we're losing money. And I'm sure you're aware that this year we have had to make many, many deep cuts in order to get to a budget that our towns can support. And I just ask you to keep in mind that as a region we have unique needs, and if you have any questions about those needs, any one of us would be willing to talk to you about it. And again, thank you for your time.
Well, there's a statement at the bottom of the paper here that I think you gentlemen have it, and notwithstanding any general or special law to the contrary, regional school transportation payments made by the state in any fiscal year through the General Appropriations Act shall not be lowered by a greater percentage than any reduction made to the Chapter 70 payments in that fiscal year. You probably already knew that, but that was for everybody else.
I'd like to hand out something I printed out. Just shows the last 5 or 6 years of Chapter 70 and unrestricted aid. Triton. I don't know if there's enough copies to go around, but you can just pass those out. And I know we've been steadily trying to increase it year to year. We still aren't back to where we were as the graph will show, but it's something that Representative Hill and I will be fighting for. As you know, this is based on a formula in Chapter 70 that was made over 20 years ago. It's a formula that was supposed to be adjusted every couple of years. That never happened. So it resulted in, perhaps towns like this getting shortchanged, which is what I suspect. But it's something that we're looking to change, both to change the formula and change the amounts going into Chapter 70.
So I'm very informal. May I call you Dina?
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's talk about the regional school transportation first. We have to go back into the current fiscal year, FY15. We were told at one point, halfway through the year, that we were probably going to have about $150 to $200 million shortfall for the current fiscal year. And as we got more and more into the year, that number turned into $350 million. And then, as you know, when Governor Baker took over, that number became almost $800 million of a deficit for the current fiscal year. So we go back to the former governor who had to make some 9C cuts to balance the budget. For those of you who do not know, under our Constitution, we always have to have a balanced budget. And as soon as the budget goes out of balance, it is up to the administration, the governor, to make the 9C cuts to bring us back into balance. Unfortunately, he went after some of the school aid that we love and near and dear to us, as it is near and dear to you. And one of those was regional school transportation. We have argued, and many of my colleagues actually sent a letter to the Attorney General, because we believe that he did not have the power to cut regional school transportation under his administration. And for those of you who do not know, and I'm sure you do through the process, under the 9C, he can only cut what's under his administration. So Executive Office of Education, Executive Office of Public Safety, Executive Office of Health and Human Service. He can't go outside of those parameters. We would argue that under this particular cut, he did. And we have asked for an opinion by the Attorney General. We have not heard back from her, whether she believes that this was unlawful, if you will, or if it was not within his purview. And absent her opinion, there is a group of individuals who are actually ready to sue the state over that 9C cut. We have been supportive of that, actually, because we have not gotten an answer back, and we haven't seen any movement by any other groups within the legislature to put those dollars back, because we're waiting for the opinion that never came, if I can be very honest. So we're working toward that goal, but at the same time, we are working with Chairman Dempsey of Ways and Means to try and put the monies back into that line item. We have an opportunity, and let me interrupt by saying this is Paul O'Brien, legislative aide to Representative Kelcourse, who could not be here tonight because there's a sickness in his family that he is dealing with that just popped up about 2 hours ago. So he apologizes, and Paul is here in his place. We are trying to get the monies back to the level before 9C. For those of you who, and again, I'm sure you understand this, when Governor Baker proposed his budget, we have come to find that we're at a $1.8 billion deficit for FY16. And he needed to close that gap, and he only had about a month and a half to put his budget together. So what happened was he took the amount that had been cut and he level funded it. We're trying to put the monies back to the level they were before the 9C cut. We have a regional school transportation caucus, actually, and we've been meeting on a regular basis. We have all gone into the chairman and asked that this be a priority to go back to the levels that we were last year, knowing full well that things are tight and that we may not have the revenues that we had hoped that we would have moving into FY16, but it's clear throughout the Commonwealth, Republican, Democrat, school committees, superintendent committees that have met with us on a regular basis, that regional school transportation is a top priority. I've met with Masco, I've met with Manchester Essex, I'm now meeting with Triton, and I've met with Hamilton Wenham. This is their #1 ask of us. So moving forward, we're hoping to get back to the level we were last year when the budget was adopted and signed into law before the 9C cuts. We're advocating for you on that front. I know Senator Tarr and Senator O'Connor Ives have also asked their leadership to make sure that this goes back to the level it was last year. I can't promise that number for you, but we certainly are advocating that we go back to that level. As you know, this was a promise that was made to regional schools many, many, many years ago. When we asked you to regionalize, we gave you the incentive that we would take care of regional school transportation. We have not kept that promise over the last few years, but many of us feel we should. And we will continue to do that as the budget moves forward. And with that said, our budget is coming out in about 2 weeks, and then we're going to debate it the last week of April, and we'll have better numbers for you. Madam Chair, when you talk about predictability, we are as frustrated as you are that these numbers don't come to you until July 1st. We've been pushing and will continue to push for an early local aid resolution. We ask for it every year in March so that you can put your numbers together going into your town meetings. Unfortunately, because the revenues have literally been a roller coaster for FY15 and moving into FY16, we can't offer you those numbers yet. My hope will be that when the budget comes out, that will be the new floor. I've never seen us go below House numbers, and I cannot believe for a second that that will happen again moving forward. So again, in a week and a half, 2 weeks, you'll have even better numbers than you have today. And with that, advocating for more regional school transportation. I know you also wanted to talk about the full-day kindergarten grants. Those two were cut under the 9C, and we have signed on, or many of us have signed on or asked for in our meetings that those numbers be put back to the figures that they were last year. That one's going to be a little bit more difficult to try and get you, but we are advocating for it. Again, our asks of the chairman have been full-day kindergarten and regional school transportation. You know in your budget that the governor had proposed an additional $20 per student for Chapter 70, so we didn't see a decrease. He actually added more money to the Chapter 70 formula, but sadly, as we have argued and Representative Merritt talked about briefly, the fact that this formula continues to be not equitable in distributing Chapter 70 funds back to our school districts. You really got only a tiny increase when it was about $110 million, additional dollars, that he put into Chapter 70. And that was frustrating for all of us on the North Shore as we saw those figures, because we thought with the $110 million we would see a pretty good increase, and it was anything but that. So moving forward, as you know, the Chapter 70 Review Commission, which is something Representative Ehrlich and I moved in the House and got passed, and of course in the Senate with Senator Tarr and others, it signed into law. The commission has been meeting. They had, I believe, 6 hearings across the Commonwealth. They finished up about 2.5 weeks ago, and even as of today, they were meeting to talk about the report, which is due in June, and it will be done by June, I was told today. So we hope that when that report comes out, that we'll see some major changes to the way we distribute Chapter 70 funds back to our cities and towns and to our school districts. Something that we have been pushing a lot is, obviously, we would like to see more of a special education put into the formula. It currently does not look at it very much. The special education transportation we would like to see put on or into that formula. It doesn't look at that at all. And we also would like to look at the health care that cost that you folks have in the school district added to the formula. Those are the big 3 that I've been pushing. And we had a meeting, a hearing in Danvers, and we started hearing that theme over and over and over. That those are the big 3 that we would like to see put into, but it's going to cost millions of dollars to be able to do that. And where do we come up with those funds? We hope the report will help us with that endeavor as well. But it's due in June, it's going to be done in June, and then hopefully moving into FY16 it will be a template or a blueprint of how we can finally make changes to this very important distribution formula, something that we've been pushing, like I said, for over 20 years, and it was only about 6 years ago that the DESE finally took a look at this formula, and as Representative Mara said, it was supposed to have been looked at every 2 years, and it had not been for decades. So frustrating, but at the same time, very optimistic, cautiously optimistic, that we're going to see a good report come out of this commission, this foundation commission, and that we'll finally have a bite at the apple on making major changes to the way we distribute the funds back to districts like Triton. The state aid, I know you would love to see it go up to $100 per student, an increase, but to be real, I just don't see that happening in the fiscal climate that we have now. Closing this gap has been very difficult, and although our revenues continue to grow, our expenses continue to grow even more so. Biggest expenses are in the Medicaid and in our health care. Our retirement funds continue to rise at a rate that we did not expect, and it goes on, and it is quite frankly snowballed. When we had to move from Romney Care to Obamacare, you read about it, you saw it. Moving from one to the other cost us almost $1 billion, not expected in what we had hoped would happen in the transition, and those are things that we have to pay for. And those are seems to be some of the biggest hits for us moving forward, and that's why adding more money to all line items is going to be very difficult. So I just don't see us increasing it to $100, but my hope will be the $20 you may see a little bit of an increase over that amount moving forward. So with that said, we will entertain more questions.
Hey, Representatives, thank you for being here. We keep talking about the pie, and it's only so big. I'd like to speak specifically, though, about medical costs associated with students in special education on IEPs. And while I'm excited about this commission, I am so grateful it's working and is examining the costs associated with education. My question is, why aren't healthcare companies a player in funding healthcare for students between 7 a.m. and 3 p.m.? I mean, right now, we have an Affordable Care Act, we have Romney Care, we supposedly are insuring everyone. But when it comes to medical costs for students in this building or getting to and from this building, it's on the backs of this district or on the back of the state. Why isn't it on the backs of health insurance companies? So if that commission is looking at needing to add millions and billions and probably trillions of dollars to fund education, why are we letting the healthcare companies off the hook? And instead just assuming first the district absorbs it and then we pass on the cost to the state, and through circuit breaker we hope to get a portion back.
I've been hogging the microphone. You want to answer first?
Yeah, actually, this was a question that came up last week. We met with the superintendents last week, and this came up with regards to special education and students that require, I guess, a nurse or someone to be with them all day, which is very, very costly. And it was a very good question. Why is that a school function or a school expense? It should be a healthcare expense. And we are looking into it. I don't have an answer yet, but it goes back to something else on here, unfunded mandates.
Yeah.
That's something that I think needs to be spearheaded right away, because it's great to try to get more money into the system, but you know, we as a state already do spend a lot on education. If you look at per pupil spending, it's up there among the highest in the country, and maybe we should look at the other end of that, because
But not what the state contributes per pupil, I have
no,
to say.
but the overall spending is up there. But we should look at the other side to see why is it so expensive. And every time I talk to a teacher, a principal, a superintendent, it's because of unfunded mandates. And I think that's one of them. We put demands on you that we don't give you the money to pay for, in a nutshell. That's what we do from the state level. And I think it needs to be addressed in an overall picture. And I'm optimistic because we do have a bill right now that a committee is working on to address all unfunded mandates. I'm hoping it'll be on sooner rather than later, but I'm glad you brought it up, because that should be on there. It's, I know something that's very, very costly. And it wasn't just Mr. Farmer, it was also Mr. Mulqueen from Pentucket as well, also brought that up. So I don't have a good answer for you as to why it's funded that way, but I agree with you that it probably should not be. So
Thank you for looking into
So
that.
to answer your question, this has been something that's been talked about, again, for at least the 16 years that I have been in the legislature, and I know before my time. And the fact of the matter is the insurance lobby is so strong, they don't want to see this cost put on them, and they lobby against it. There are bills that have been filed. I filed one myself that would shift the health care cost to the insurance companies. And once it gets into the committees are, for whatever reason, and we can talk about it if we further if we need to, but the fact of the matter is it never gets out of committee. We never even get to debate the issue on the floor of the House. There are many of these issues in relation to special ed that are health care costs. There's no question about it. But the fact of the matter is they have such a strong lobby that we can't even get the bill out for debate or for a vote, to answer your question. It has been proposed on numerous occasions, but the fact of the matter is, because of the strong lobbying efforts from that side, we can't even get a vote or the bill out for debate.
Thank you. Paul?
I just want to pick up on that just a little bit. I recognize that it's difficult getting it out of the committee, but isn't it incumbent upon the leadership in the legislature to say and recognize what a wild card the medical is to the IEP and to the school districts, and give some pushback to the lobbyists? I mean, we need this. You know, we educate here. We don't treat medically. That's not what we should be doing here. And so I recognize that you're saying it doesn't get out of committee, but the players to be in the legislature need to take that step.
And I agree with you 100%. Your whole legislative delegation agrees with you 100%. That the leadership should be allowing these bills to come out and at least have a debate on them and discuss them. If they feel they shouldn't be voted for, then vote against them. But there's been many of us who feel very strongly that the insurance company should be picking up some of these costs. And we will continue that fight. We haven't dropped the fight. It's not from lack of trying. But I agree with you that the leadership really does need to. And again, I think with the new administration in place and the fact that we are looking for ways to fund education and fund other things, this is our opportunity, and this discussion and this debate, this is the time that we should probably have those discussions and make some movement on it. But it's not from lack of trying from your delegation, and our leadership feels very strongly that this should move forward. And my hope would be that because of the deficit, that we can have that debate and that discussion now.
Can I ask who specifically is the leadership that's not getting it out of committee to be discussed? Who do we
Well, I think
contact?
over the last few years, you would have to look to the speakers of the houses, the committee chairs, which have changed, again, every 2 years. Usually you see a change in leadership. So we start the debate all over again. And for whatever reason, they just seem not to want to deal with it.
Well, because when we've had an opportunity to ask questions before, the same thing has been said, the leadership, and so it's very frustrating for us because we don't know. We see you represent our school district, yet there's somebody out there, somebody else in Boston or Beacon Hill that's stopping things from happening, apparently. So if we could know who that was.
So through your superintendent associations and through the school committee associations that you all belong to, they are up on Beacon Hill and they are meeting with the Speaker of the House. They are meeting with Chairman Dempsey, and they are voicing these proposals and advocating for them. What I would urge from this point forward, and actually in Ipswich we have a legislative committee, in Hamilton-Wenham we have a legislative committee that we meet with, and we bring them up to Beacon Hill so that they can meet with these folks as well and talk with them one-on-one. So it's not just us advocating on your behalf, but it's you as well. They love when people visit the State House and love talking to school committee members as well as other advocates for different issues. So I would make that offer to you as well. If you want a group of 3 or 4 to come up to Beacon Hill, we'd be more than happy to set up meetings with those legislative leaders. I do know we have a school day on the Hill coming up in the last week of April. I know I have representatives from Hamilton-Wenham coming up. I have representatives from Masco coming up and representatives from Manchester-Essex coming up. And if you folks want to come up on that day, it's a day on the Hill, and you actually get to meet with the chairs of the Education Committee. The Speaker will come and speak to you. The President will come and speak to the group. I have found it to be very informative, and the school committee members who have chosen to go to that day have found it to be informative as well.
Could I ask a supplementary? Could I ask I'm intrigued about the conversation that goes on between insurance companies and leadership. What leverage do insurance companies actually have over the leadership of the Senate and the House?
I think it comes down to relationships, people they know.
They golf together and...
I wouldn't say they golf together, but they certainly get together and they talk about these issues.
Okay.
And so the insurance companies really just don't want any more claims.
I think you would see if these type of things were to pass, that your insurance bills would increase considerably. Massachusetts is one of those states where we actually mandate a lot of things into the insurance companies. That's why our insurance bills are high. And their argument would be that if we were to add things like this, that overall you would see a huge increase in your premiums. And when they have those debates, those tend to stop bills.
But the difference is the costs, because as a society we want to provide these services to our especially high needs children, then those costs would be spread across society in Massachusetts, not coming down hard on a district that suddenly has a child with incredible medical needs move in and force us to cut something mid-year.
Sure.
I mean, it used to be years ago, did it not, that Health and Human Services covered a lot of what we're covering in the education budgets. And I get the motivation is to keep kids in school and with their peers and all that, but when the medical costs go through the roof, and it's just an unfair burden on a particular district in a particular year, and it comes down to predictability.
Sure. And understand, and again, I have filed a bill in the past that would have done exactly what you want, but also understand in the past 10 years, We have mandated more prescriptions on your insurance. We have mandated autism, folks within the autism spectrum to be added to the insurance. And we've added many other things. And again, all worthwhile endeavors. But when we do that, we are adding an increase to the consumer. And it's a huge increase. It's not tiny. And that is spread across every citizen in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And when these insurance companies go before the Insurance Commission looking for increases, because the rates are set and things of that sort, we are one of the highest in the country. And when consumers call us and say, why are our insurance so high? It's because we have mandated, through legislation, many, many, many things. When you look at the cost, and again, I don't want to veer us off,
Yep.
but when you looked at Romney Care, for example, when we were putting that into place and regulations were being put into place, we told our consumers and we told the people of the Commonwealth, you would be able to buy a Chevrolet plan for your insurance plan. But after the regulations were put into place and the mandates of you have to have prescription as part of that, you have to be able to cover all cancer costs, you have to cover, I don't even want to get into, because I don't want to submarine any one group, but the mandates that we put into place, you couldn't buy a Chevy by the end of it. You had to buy a Cadillac. And people have become very frustrated at the cost of their insurance. And something like this, and again, arguably, I don't have numbers for you, arguably this would jack the cost up across the Commonwealth to consumers who, you and I would argue, we should do that. But others would argue we should not. That's
This is
the debate.
healthcare,
But that's the
not
debate.
education.
No, and again, you and I agree with that. But there are others in the legislature who may not agree with you and I. That's the problem. And it just so happens the people in position to
I
make sure
understand.
bills move forward disagree with us.
Do any other committee members? Yes, Dick.
Evening, gentlemen. In regard to the unfunded mandates in education, are these authored and created in the state of Massachusetts, or are they coming from Arnie Duncan's office in Washington? And when you get a mandate either authored in the state or from the Fed, how do you fight it if you don't feel it's fair? Because this year in particular, I think we've had several that are just crazy.
I think most of the mandates come from the state level. There are some from the federal level, but I believe most of the mandates are handed down from the state. And some of them were created many years ago that have perhaps outlived their usefulness and could be, revoked. It's something that, needs to be looked at on a more regular basis. We haven't been doing that. And like I said, we're making the schools do things that perhaps don't need to be done anymore. Everything from paperwork to overhead. It just seems to me, as an outsider, I'm still new to this. Representative Hill has been here a long time. I don't know a tenth of what he does about this formula, but what I'm seeing from the outside is that we spend a lot of money on people that, for instance, never see the inside of a classroom, and we make you do that. And it was probably done with the best of intentions. Everything we do, I can promise you, was done with the best of intentions. But, we know where that road leads to. And it's something that needs to be reviewed, like I said, so that we can only keep the requirements that are truly needed. And these mandates, like I said, they're being reviewed right now. It is my hope that rather than wait for a committee to review all of them, that perhaps we could spearhead at least some obvious ones right away to alleviate some of your costs right away. That's my hope. That's what we're going to shoot for. But, like I said, I can't promise or guarantee anything like that will happen anytime soon. But that's what my hope is, because for instance, we just passed legislation last year on bullying. Once again, done with the best of intentions, because nobody wants to see bullying. But I think what we handed down was a bunch of mandates on reporting, that you're going to have people filling out forms and, stacks of paper maybe this thick, and they're going to go somewhere in Boston. And I don't even know where they're going to go from there. We need to look at mandates like that, that perhaps we handed down years ago, that maybe we can get by without, just so you can alleviate some of your costs. But that's my hope. And I'm not aware of any federal mandates unless you are.
So, to be honest, the mandates, they come down from the feds and the state, mostly from the state. And the good news is, and I think there is some very good news, Representative Mara is talking about the fact that we're looking at a lot of unfunded mandates. Your superintendent was very good about forwarding a lot of those unfunded mandates to us. And again, I told you there's a great opportunity right now because of the budget deficit to look at ways to save money, not only for the state, but for municipalities as well as school districts. And Governor Baker has made it very, very clear that the unfunded mandates in education are through the roof. And he has put together a commission. DESE is looking at these unfunded mandates because of the great list that you forwarded to us and the superintendent's roundtable forwarded to us. We had requested. They can regulatory-wise get rid of a lot of these unfunded mandates. We legislatively mandate they have to regulate these reporting issues and things of that sort. So regulatory-wise, they could do it without it going through the legislature. And the governor is hoping through his administration to be able to do that to give you some relief. My hope is there's actually a bill been filed going down the same parallel path as the commission that's been set up that is also looking at other unfunded mandates. So the more you can give us, this would be the time to have that debate and that discussion. And the governor, like I said, is very keen on trying to clean this up for you and see where we can save you some dollars, because he understands, as we all do, that we can't necessarily give you the cash that you're looking for, but if we can give you some relief in this way, it is going to save thousands of dollars and millions across the Commonwealth, but thousands for a school district.
Any other members have any questions for the representatives? Dina?
Can I just ask one final question then? I understand that the review commission has been established, and you even said yourself that you're not sure what will come of that. I mean, what can we take from that? I mean, how much can we really expect? And even with the unfunded mandates, there's several groups looking at it, but I don't want it looked at to death. I want action on these things.
Yeah,
so
me too.
the report will be coming out, the review report you said will be coming out in June.
Yes.
What then?
Well, once we get that, then we're going to take, I'm hoping, it's going to be a blueprint for us to move forward. It's not only going to tell us how we should have the formula distributing the funds, but it's also going to help us in identifying where those funds should be coming from. And once we have that blueprint, it would be my vision that moving into FY16 and FY17, that we would start legislatively making those changes to the budget, to the foundation budget, as well as looking at other ways to fund what I think we're going to need to distribute those funds back to the school districts. Again, cautiously optimistic that it's going to be a great blueprint. I have been told by Chairman Peisch and over in the Senate that once we get this blueprint, we want to take action as quick as possible, because we understand that for too long this has not been a fair and equitable formula.
Paul had a question.
I have a quick question. Do you get a sense that the members of the legislature are concerned in applying pressure in the Attorney General's office about the lawsuit, bringing an action against the governor to ascertain the 9 seat cuts, whether or not they were lawful?
Yes. And just to follow up on that, I believe we're going to have one more supplemental budget before the end of the fiscal year. It is our hope that we're able, minus that lawsuit or minus the action, that we'll be able to put some of the dollars back into where the 9 seat cut was. Because actually the revenues for last month and this month have been above earmarks, benchmarks. And with those additional dollars, we feel that we should be able to put some of the 9 seat cuts back. And it would be my hope that we'll be able to do that for this fiscal year. But then again, moving forward, yes, there's been a lot of pressure. The caucus is very strong, and it's quite large. I mean, it goes from Metro West to the Cape to North Shore, out to the western part of the state as well. So.
And Dick?
Follow-up question on the mandates. I'm more interested when they're in the womb. Who's overseeing this? What is that process? Does the state education board get to do something, and then it happens, and then we push back and say, hey, we don't want, this is unfunded, it's costing us money. I'd like to see something put in place where somebody's there during the creation phase to look at this, educate the legislature, say, geez, talk to the superintendents and say, geez, this is a good idea or it's not a good idea, and let's just not even consider it.
Sure.
Just saying, before the mandates are even created, before they're made into law, to have that happen? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Just that somebody be there as oversight for the process and say, okay, I want to do this, and I want the schools to do this, but is it really a good idea to have the school? That's where I'm coming from.
Sure. And you hope, excuse me, you hope that when the bill is going through the legislative committee and through the process, that those questions are being answered before they get to the floor of the House. Apparently, in some cases, we've either ignored it, I'm saying collectively, or we just felt so strongly about the issue that we passed it anyways, the bullying being one of those examples. We all heard horror stories from our parents and students who had been bullied, and we felt very strongly we needed to do something. Did we go too far? Maybe. Certainly in the reporting part of it, we did. But I think again, this is the opportunity to look at things like that, and maybe we can revise laws like the bullying law and other things. But you hope through the legislative process, through the committee process, that those questions are being answered, because we do meet with the superintendent's coalition, certainly with us, Essex County-wise. We meet regularly with the superintendents. We also meet with your school committee associations, and we try and get feedback from them as well before we make a decision on how we're going to vote on these issues.
Dina?
Can I make, I promise, my last comment? You've mentioned several times the regional school caucus.
Yes.
And I'm glad to hear that that is so strong. I know Representative Turner was fabulous with really getting that out there and trying to educate your colleagues as to, as I said, the different needs of a regional school. And again, I just want to emphasize for not you three, I know you understand it, but the public at large, is that the regional districts are a different animal than municipalities. And again, any cuts in regional transportation is a cut to education, which therefore also affects our municipal partners, our member towns. So please keep working at educating your colleagues on our unique needs, and that it is imperative that by supporting regional transportation, you are also supporting our member towns. Thank you again.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Come on, you get us once a year.
Oh, no, we're going to try for more than once a year.
Well, I hope.
This is just the beginning. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Can I just end by saying
Certainly.
our partnership with your superintendent has been phenomenal.
Thank you for
Over the
saying
last
that.
couple of years. Whenever there is an issue, whenever there is an unfunded mandate being proposed or things of that sort, your superintendent is either on the phone or emailing us on a regular basis, letting us know how it will affect Triton. He's wonderful to work with, and the partnership that we have and that the senators have with him have been just so good over the last couple of years. We appreciate him and all the work that he does, and we truly appreciate the work that you do with us on a regular basis. So thank you, Mr.
Thank you for saying
Superintendent.
that. I just have one thing that this is not a question, well, sort of a question. Senator Ives sent a list of legislation, proposed legislation, which that's the first time I've ever seen anything like that. And at the time, she said that one thing that we could do, or everybody can do, is to show up for the hearings, or at least send correspondence for the hearings. And I have not ever received any dates for what those hearings.
So we're having an issue right now between the House and the Senate on our joint rules. So a lot of these bills have not actually gone to committee yet.
Okay.
It's been very frustrating because in my time, we've never had this issue before.
Okay.
But we do have a new president and new administration, and the Speaker of the House. They have a conflict on our joint rules. My hope would be that probably between May and June, you'll start seeing these dates start popping up, and you can certainly go online to our website and every day they will list exactly
Okay.
what's
Thank
going to
you
be
very
going
much.
on. But we'll reach out to the superintendent when those bills are coming. Actually, we didn't talk about that tonight, and I'll just leave you with this. Representative Kalkos has filed a bill that would put transportation with the special ed into the formula. So he's filed that bill. He's also filed a bill that would lower the threshold from 4 times to 3 times the foundation budget for the special education circuit breaker. That's something that may have some legs this year because, again, we understand what you're going through in terms of special education. Senator Ives has filed at least 3 or 4 good educational bills, and we're working all together to make sure, hope that those bills move forward through the legislation and get signed into law.
Okay. Once again, thank you very much for your
Very welcome.
time.
I just wanted to apologize for coming late. I was actually pulled over coming here to get here on time.
Well, that's
And Representative Kalkors ran on improving his school district. And, you know, he was appointed by the leadership to the school committee. And I know he will fight very hard to get money back into the district. And he has wonderful mentors like Representative Mira and Representative Hill working with him. And he's very passionate about you know, improving the Triton School District.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is a program presentation. High school students who are participating in the Jean Geiger Crisis Center sponsored program designed to develop student skills to intervene in difficult situations rather than be passive bystanders will present on their experience of the Mentors in Violence Prevention program. The curriculum has been developed by the Northeastern University Center for the Study of Sport in Society, whose staff are working with our students.
Hi, thanks for having us.
I'm Christine Sacconi, and the Mentors in Violence Prevention, otherwise known as the MVP program, was founded in 1993 by Sport and Society at Northeastern University, motivates athletes and leaders to play a central role in solving problems that historically have been considered women's issues, including rape, battering, and sexual harassment. MVP was one of the first programs to actively engage men and use the bystander approach as a strategy to address gender-based violence. The MVP program motivates men and women to work together in preventing men's violence against women. Utilizing this initiative bystander approach to prevention, men and women take back the power and shed stigma often associated with bystanders. This empowers bystanders to stand up against all forms of relationship violence. Participants learn to serve as role models, working to prevent violence and confront abusive peers. The approach does not involve finger-pointing, nor does it blame participants for the widespread problems of gender violence. Instead, it sounds a positive call for proactive, preventative behavior and leadership. Working to prevent sexual violence is an essential social justice issue that all social leaders and administrators need to address. MVP provides an evidence-based strategy to combat this violence. And some of the goals of the MVP program are to raise participant awareness of underlying issues and unique dynamics of all forms of men's violence against women, to challenge participants to think critically and personally about these issues, open dialogue amongst participants about the dynamics and context of all forms of men's violence against women, and to inspire participants to be proactive leaders around these issues by challenging them to develop concrete options for intervention in potentially dangerous situations involving peers.
So our training at Triton, the students participating in the program were recommended by their teachers and coaches based on their leadership skills. And out of all the students recommended, 20 were selected to be part of the training program. We met once a month for 4 to 5 hours, and we talked about all the topics like sexual assault, sexual harassment, rape, battery, gender equality. The meetings were led by Jared Chin, Lisa, and Betsy Gardner of Northeastern University. A sample meeting, we would start with an icebreaker activity. Usually it was like a little game or something to get us all warmed up and talking. And then we'd watch a video about whatever we were going to talk about that day. And then we'd do this activity called Agree, Disagree, Unsure. And they'd propose a question, and there was 3 sides of the room, and we'd stand on the side we wanted, and we'd debate on our point of view. And then there was the gender-based discussion where we'd split up into male and female and talk about how the issue related to our gender. And then once we talked about that, gender separately, we met as a whole group and talked about each side and related to each other. So the implementation, the first year, which was this year, we started, and there was an MVP awareness raising session for the staff and faculty. Then the students went through the 18 to 22 hours of MVP training, and we'd met one day every month. Then there was the MVP training for middle and high school students through peer facilitation, which we'll be coming up with soon. And then we attended a breakfast, the White Ribbon Breakfast on March 24th, and they talked about the MVP program there. And then next year, we're implementing more in the MVP Train the Trainer for selected faculty and staff, more training for the student leaders, training also for middle and high school students through peer facilitation. We'll participate in the White Ribbon Day again, and that we'll evaluate the program and provide feedback on how we feel it's working. And we're going to end it with a quote from Dave Hoffman, the senior manager of community relations for the Celtics. He said, "MVP is a life changer. It gave me an opportunity to examine health and unhealthy relationships at a critical time in my life. It provided me with a foundation to operate respectfully on both a personal and professional level, and I draw upon lessons learned from that program almost daily."
Thank you. Does anybody on the committee have any questions? Dina?
Thank you both for being here. When you were talking about the format of your discussions, and you said that you broke out into different types of groups, can you give us an example of what a topic of discussion would be?
Well, there was questions on what do you see as a man as, and what do you see a woman as, like superficial seeings, like women are supposed to work in the house and clean, and then the women would talk about that, and the men would talk about theirs, and then we'd come together and talk about it as a whole, just to see both sides opinion.
I think that's an interesting way to approach it. My final question I have is, it looks like this was over 2 years of training. So is it the same students, or do you incorporate new students, and what are your what grades are you two in?
We're both juniors, and this was the first year of the program. The year 2 is what we're planning to do next year, to continue the program. And I think the juniors in it, there's a couple seniors in it now, and the juniors in it will continue next year. And there'll also be some new leaders coming in to participate in the program.
So it's basically juniors and seniors that...
Yeah, it's
okay.
the upperclassmen.
Thank you.
Paul?
I just have a question. What's your name?
I'm Eric Rybicki.
Thank you. And one other question. Do you think that they'll have a different training for the middle school as opposed to the training that you've been through?
I think the training will be the same for the middle school and high school, but I'm not sure. He's probably the expert.
I'll kind of help Eric out.
What's your name?
I'm Sean McGinnis, the athletic director. I'll kind of help out here. There will be a different level to which we present it to the middle schoolers. They do have a target type of program for each age group. So when Eric talked about peer mediation, the high school students will be going down and acting as the facilitators for the training, because sometimes you find that peer-to-peer and the mentor type program will be very good for them. So they'll have a different type of training, but it will be the same message, just delivered differently.
Thank you. Dick?
What type of training do the coaches go through?
So the coaches, unfortunately, we can't go back a couple of screens, but they talked about facilitation training, training the trainer. We have selected approximately 8 teachers and coaches, because remember, this is more than just an athletic initiative that we're taking. We're taking this across the whole school, so it's not just student athletes involved. So we will be doing train the trainers, where we're going to help identify any type of situations, be able to open up conversations between educators, coaches, and the students across the school so they can go to them, and how to react to the information they're gaining. We've got Mr. Fontana, who works in the administration office here at the high school. He's also part of this program, so we have somebody that we can talk to and find the help for the students, so that way they're taken care of. And the coaches will have that training So that way they're not just, what do I do with the information, overwhelmed. They'll also have a process of, what do I do when I get the information? Where do I go to? Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Robin? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Lonnie.
Sean and the students, how do you know the program's effective? Do you have components to measure, or have you seen any difference in the students, or how do you know?
So maybe what I'll do is I'll talk about the evaluation, but then I think when you talk, your last statement was, you know, have you seen the difference in the students? I think I'll have Christine and Eric speak to that. We will be evaluating the program each year to make sure that we're making progress. We don't want to just say we're doing a program just to do a program. We're evaluating, and I think that what we'll find out from the students next is there is a difference, and we've seen how engaged they are. And it was great to go to the White Ribbon Breakfast, which we were invited by Mr. Farmer. We brought, I think it was 12 students, and there was 8 members of the Triton family administration and teaching family there. And it was great to see them interacting with the community members and other school members from the surrounding schools. So the other thing that we'll add to it is the MVP program is actually being run now by the Major League Baseball Association. And also they're doing work with the NFL. So this is a very reputable program where they're well versed in this. And I think doing the high school students is a great way to start that grassroots program. And now for the difference, why don't you guys talk about the difference from the first time we met and everybody sat there quietly to where you guys are now?
I think throughout all the meetings, like, we got a lot more educated. Like, before I didn't really know about this topic, and it's like educated us a lot more to be proactive and like not wait for a situation, but like recognize the signs.
I've learned to recognize situations where there might be harassment, and it's hard to speak up when you see it happen, but they've helped give us the confidence to know and to speak up when we see a situation like that. And even if it's someone you don't know or it's your friend, we learn to just tell them that it's wrong to do, like to harass someone, and just tell them that just tell them that it's wrong and they should stop.
My question is about the logistics of taking it from the 20 students to either all of the middle school or all of the high school. Like, just what is the plan? Is it to go 50 or 60 students at a time, or to make an attempt to reach everybody? But I'm just curious that next step.
So the goal is, as far as what we've been told, because the implementation plan is kind of a living, breathing document as far as finding out, because you don't want to do a cookie cutter process for something like this. So we've been working with the MVP staff. We've got our group of students and our facilitators now. We're going to grow that a little bit more, as you saw in the fall, with more train-the-trainers. We'll then reach out into the middle school and hopefully kind of grow the community. We'll take a section of middle schoolers and try to grow this within them. Next year, as Mr. Rybicki here said, we're going to add more student leaders, and that's the concept, is to slowly grow, because sometimes if you grow too fast, it fails. And we want to make sure that we grow it. We want to make sure that we do it properly.
Dick?
On that growth topic, USA Hockey has a program very similar to this for youth hockey, and all coaches have to go through a training. Do you envision spreading this down to Triton, Pop Warner, baseball, having adult parent coaches go through some type of training like USA Hockey does for youth hockey?
Well, one of the things we want to do is get through year 2 and evaluate the program, because before we try to get too big, we want to make sure it works here. And the other thing, too, is our coaches are trying to do the best to work with the youth programs, and it was very well received, as we saw the other night at Mr. Farmer's meeting. We want to make sure that there is a break in the management of that, because the youth sports do not fall under the high school. But what we would hopefully do is guide them to show what is working at the high school level, what is waiting for them, so you continue to drill down into the foundation and build the foundation that way, and try to make offers and allow them to make contacts with the MVP program to try to grow it that way. But I think right now for us, we want to get through year 2, evaluate it, fix anything that we need to fix here to make sure it works properly, and then open it up to other areas in the community. Does that?
I think a lot of these things begin at earlier ages than middle school or high school. Fortunately.
And we agree, and that's why we're, you know, as they had said, we're starting at the top. It's kind of, we're starting at the top of the pyramid, and we're going down. And I know sometimes that's not the best way to do it, but it is the best way for us in this model to try to get it going as quick as possible. And some of these members, Mr. Ibicki plays basketball. To a lot of the kindergartens through fourth graders, he plays in the NBA. Ms. Saccone plays soccer and softball. She's a professional athlete to these people. So getting those role models and understanding what they are in the community first is outstanding, and then we will go down.
Thank you. Any other questions on this program? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
The next item on our agenda is regarding the North Shore Education Consortium Articles of Agreement. All collaboratives in the state have been required to review their articles of association to align them with the stipulations of recent legislation and regulations. The attached revised articles of association have been approved by the Board of the North Shore Education Consortium and require the endorsement of the school committees of all member districts. The recommendation is to approve the revised articles of association of the North Shore Education Consortium as presented. Could we have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the Articles of Association.
Could we have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on this? All those in favor? Opposed? None? Unanimous? Thank you very much. Next, we're going to receive an update on the recent Board of Selectmen meetings and consider the rescheduling of the development and potential financing arrangements. There are a couple of specific things that we need to talk about and to perhaps decide on tonight. So I'm now going to turn this over to the stadium guru.
Is that you tonight?
Sure. You want to start?
There are a number of things to say. Clearly, the schedule of decision-making that we were anticipating has changed with, first of all, the Board of Selectmen in Rowley and then the Board of Selectmen in Newbury determining that they would put debt exclusion ballots before the town meetings in May. We've been struggling with that to understand how it all works. Essentially, those two towns are asking their citizens to approve the debt exclusion in anticipation of a decision by the school committee to incur debt later in the year, probably late August, early September. Salisbury is in a different position for reasons which I think we understand, in that they already have an important debt exclusion in relation to their police department facility, which, if you've been there, is appalling. That they are going to look to see whether they can fund their part of the costs within their general fund in the fall. So we've got a rather curious set of decisions being made. Rowley, the town meeting is on the 4th of May, and Newbury is on May 22nd. You'll know that as public servants, the employees of the district may not use district facilities or resources in order to promote a campaign. We can provide information about a project, but we can't use our facilities to persuade people to support a project. The meeting that Mr. McInnes referred to on Monday was a meeting of 51 people, 30 coaches and 21 representatives from the community, whether it was TEF or there were one or two representatives of PTA there. There were representatives of our youth sport organizations, and the purpose of that meeting was to provide that group with information so that they could share the information with others. Brian has been busy making sure that we have information on our website. We now have Bob Lathrop's elegant video. I've used the word elegant deliberately because it is a beautiful piece of work. We have the documentation provided at Monday's meeting. Brian has completed a frequently asked questions and answers paper today. And is there a fourth document up there at the moment, Brian?
This.
Oh, the explanation of there's a paper, an explanation of the decision making process. Maybe if I stop there, Brian can tell you, because he's been involved with the permitting side of the business and had a couple of meetings recently. So could you report on that, Brian?
So we have continued the permitting process. We did slow up a bit, again, because we are not moving forward with a bidding process as we speak. It would not be bid out until next winter. It gave us a little more time. We are continuing the process so that by the time we get to the next 3 or 4 weeks, we would have all the documents, all the permitting done. Permitting is generally given for a year or two, so I think these would be 2-year permits in which we need to complete the project. But the first phase, we're not wasting any money by delaying, because Gail will continue with all the bid documents, the building specs and designs, and have it completely permitted on the shelf. And then when we're ready to actually put it out to formal bid, pull it off the shelf, and we're ready to go. As actually this afternoon, we've met with both Conservation Commission and Planning Board. Conservation Commission does routinely request a third-party reviewer for designs that may implicate the I think it's the ECAC, Environmental Area of Critical Concern, and we are right along the marsh. We are just within that border. Newbury Conservation Commission did ask for a third-party review. It is an outside engineer. We met with the Planning Board and the Concom today, or reps from both of those, along with that third-party engineer and with Gale Associates. And I believe that any of the concerns were mitigated. I don't believe there are any roadblocks, and this is working with Martha Taylor, the town planner, and Doug Packer from the conservation as the conservation agent. And so I think we're in very good standing at this point. The design, as it has stood and has been relatively unchanged, aside for some minor modifications, I believe the design will stand as it has been. So as Christopher mentioned, while there will be some votes for debt exclusions now in the spring, the approval would be in the fall, when we'd be having the committee take the vote to incur debt and time that with any necessary town meetings in the fall. We would be bidding this next winter. Again, I think I mentioned last month that the Concord Carlisle put a project out that they anticipated at 1.9 million, and it came in closer to 1.4 million. So if we were to save 25% on this project, that's close to $1 million, so that's significant savings. So we'd be bidding this out next January, February, with a construction date of as soon as the snow melts, which is hopefully significantly earlier than this year. And then by the summertime of 2016, it would be done, so that by the time fall sports rolled around, even with earlier starts on late summer, we would be ready to go. So that's where it stands now.
And if we don't count our chickens at this stage, if we found ourselves with some negative votes in the fall, we'd obviously get ourselves ready then for May spring meetings. There's not a huge disadvantage in terms of delay to the finished project. It would be summer, fall, or fall. The disadvantage would be that interest rates may go up, petroleum products may go up, and so we would lose some advantage in terms of where the money market is at the moment. And I think that's a powerful reason why people should grasp the nettle now and enable us to get on with it through a favourable bidding period, and while interest rates and petroleum prices are relatively low.
If I can add, the paper that I just passed out, my microphone's very loud, sorry. You had Triton Stadium renovation project as of April 1st in your packet. It was updated. I shared this with each of the town managers just to make sure that everyone I want to make sure that everyone's on the same page. There's been some weird nuances with some votes happening. We wanted to make sure that everyone was completely clear. So there was an adjustment on the fourth bullet on the second side. I had left it a little more unclear in regards to whether or not there would be a debt exclusion vote at an election in Salisbury. And Neil made it very clear that there would not be. There isn't going to be an election. If the town meeting does approve it in the fall, which he obviously would support, then it would be absorbed into the budget. And then the final bullet, which I'm not sure if this was included on the April 1st, because of this delayed timescale, there would actually be no costs incurred to any of the towns via an assessment in fiscal 16. Because now we're talking about a bid anticipation note or a ban that would cover the life of the project. We'd be pulling that ban in the spring. That ban closes when the project's done, almost certainly after June 30th. So that ban would actually be issued into a bond in the very early stages of fiscal 17, which we would likely then have an interest payment due, call it winter holidays-ish time, for an interest payment, and then similar to our regular capital bonds, a full bigger payment due in March or April. So just that is the reason for that update. The other, I don't know if we want to talk about the items that we need to have some feedback.
Maybe we should go on to the financing since we're talking about those decisions.
Yep. The other item that you have in your packet, and it came in the documents under separate cover. The District Communications Committee had met, or has met several times, and this has been the topic of discussion. And one of the requests was for, the committee actually requested that Neil Harrington and I get together to draft a funding arrangement that would further reduce the assessment to the towns each year. There were lots of thoughts thrown around the table. There were ideas about, can we use rental revenues to offset costs? Can we use rental revenues to pay down the debt? Conceptually, everyone needs to understand when we're offering public bonds, that's an investor investing the money and assuming they're getting the interest as their investment return. So on a 20-year bond, generally the earliest call-in or refinance that you could make would be 10 years out. So it's not like a mortgage or a loan that you and I have that every month we can put down an extra couple $100s on the principal to pay it off sooner. It doesn't work that way. So the general consensus around the table was that the plan that we've talked about all along was to use rental revenues, and again, this is a goal and a hope. I still think that it's fairly a fairly safe assumption that we'd be able to bring in well in excess of 40,000 in revenues. That any of the revenues from this would be used. The first 40,000 will be set aside into a stabilization account. Early on, we talked about a stadium revolving account. I think the towns, and very rightly, like the concept of a stabilization account because it's much more restricted. Every year, the budget process would fund that amount into a stabilization account, and basically it would be restricted to only capital improvements on the stadium. So we know that 6, 7, 8 year resurfacing of the track for 45,000 or so, and that 12, 13, 14 year need to redo the carpet on the field. That 40,000 would, just assuming the 40,000, don't assume even simple interest, we would have the funds available. So that was conceptually outlined in this document. There was also a request to look at how excess and deficiency could be used to reduce the assessment to towns each year. It gets a little tricky. I'm hoping you had a chance to read through this, but the general way I drafted this was the scope, the background, making the general assumptions. I believe this can be signed by the chairs of the Board of Selectmen and the chair of the school committee, because at the end of the day, this isn't putting anything into place that is going to supersede another statutory requirement. For example, if we're going to use excess and deficiency, this basically calls to say, in the budget process, we're going to assign and say if we have a certain value of excess and deficiency, we're going to earmark this much towards reducing the stadium assessment. It would show, like you have in the budget document now, here's the capital assessment for the buildings, here's the capital assessment from the stadium. We're gonna apply 30,000 of excess and deficiency to reduce each town's assessment by 10,000. So this is just saying we're going to agree to do that. The statutory requirement is the vote by the members of town meeting to say, yes, you can use E&D for that. So perhaps some of the semantics would need to change. Neil Harrington and I have both agreed that this is a good working draft in regards to it representing what the DCC group did arrive at, and certainly we wanted the committee to endorse it, at least if not formally vote it, but endorse it before we bring it to the full DCC. So the general assumptions, the stadium, again, I won't go through the general assumptions because I think it basically it rehashes a lot of the things that we've talked about. The basic, it's a 20-year note, it's a $4 million project, roughly $3.2 million was bonded or paid over 20 years. In that we would be dividing it per the regional agreement. That was a big debate. Do we divide by 3? Do we divide it based on foundation enrollment? And everyone agreed that it had to be on the regional agreement amount. Because if not, that would require another vote every year to approve it if you're doing anything other than the regional agreement. And then in section 4, it really gets into the accounting for the stadium rental revenues, which basically is what I had mentioned, that we're putting it aside. Any amounts up to 40,000 go in to the stabilization account. Any amounts above that are used to reduce the assessment for the following year. We would have to figure this out, how this is done in arrears, because we would have to get a full year's of rental capacity before we can say here's how much we're going to get. So it would have to be an understanding that we would have to figure something out the first year, or just leave alone as a straight assessment. And then section 5 is the use of excess and deficiency, which I think may really be the only thing that would be considered potentially controversial. Again, this was not, I cannot say there was a scientific formula used to come up with these numbers. It was just, if the balance of E&D is certified at 350,000 or less, we would not be applying anything to reduce the assessment to the towns. If it's certified between 350 and 500, we would use 30,000. If it was certified between 5 and 7, we would use 60,000. And if it was certified, that says 700,000 and 90, that should say 700,000 and 900,000. I'm sorry, if it's great, no, that is correct. If it's greater than 700,000, 90,000 shall be used towards the reduction.
So we're really wanting you to endorse this so that we can then have further discussion with the towns.
Certainly not done.
But it is draft in capital red letters.
So an endorsement is not necessarily a vote.
Correct.
Well, I would just express my concern that I think the threshold of 350 to 500,000 to even begin to dip in to reduce the assessments is a frighteningly low E&D to be taking out of there to offset. I mean, the trade-off is there's less to go in to support the operating budget. So we're technically putting the stadium payment ahead of operating budget decisions in any given year. So I just feel that to even look at E&D under 500,000 to offset those assessments is kind of a territory I wouldn't like to go to. I'd rather start with 500,000 and above, thinking about the 30,000 to offset, and back that up, and then for 700,000 and maybe to $1 million, then we jump to 60,000. It's just, I don't know. We're way short of what should be an E&D based on our operating budget, and I think to dip into it for that stadium payment puts our ability to use E&D for our operating budget at an even greater risk.
Dina?
Robin, I share the same concern, and that was actually the number that I was coming up with too, because we have to bear in mind that the recommended amount for us to have in E&D is right over $1 million. So already, if we start at $500,000 to have an E&D, we're already cutting ourselves off in half, and that's only going to that suggested amount is only going to go up as our budget goes up because it's a percentage. So I agree with you, Robin. Looking at starting at having at least $500,000 should be the baseline.
Mary?
I agree completely with Robin and Dina and what they've said. I'm not comfortable with the E&D as low as it is now, and when we should have over $1 million in there.
Monique?
I agree with Mary, Robin, and Dina. I think you recommended that we have $1 million, like you said at one point, and
The auditors.
That's
the
yes.
auditor recommended it. I have what, 350,000 this year in stabilization. And the,
We'll talk about that next.
No,
we get
no,
finance.
that's not
oh,
true.
okay. Well,
Certified the full amount, but
right.
yeah.
Well, it's not a large amount, and I'm not comfortable with it less than 500,000. I agree.
Dick?
I agree. I think that that's too low of a figure to start pulling from it. But couldn't, in your example down here, couldn't we use some of the rental income that you're not giving back? You've got $80,000 and you're reducing the assessment by 40. So you've got $40,000 in rental income. Couldn't you take a percentage of that and put it into excess and deficiency?
Can't put rental into excess and deficiency. So basically what we're saying is
So what do you do with the rental revenue then? How do you?
the rental revenue goes, the first 40 goes into that stabilization account, and that's for just capital repairs. And then whatever above that. So this, I was using
All right,
round
so
figures. So if it was,
all right, I
yeah.
get it. All right, I understand.
So, I mean, it could also be, and again, I think it's well documented, my opinion about excess and deficiency. It could also be that if rental revenues were significantly higher than 40,000, if the assessment is going to be reduced by at least 15,000 per town because of revenue overages, then we shouldn't be using excess and efficiency. I mean, there also I can play with some language about, okay, I'm hearing that I change these 4 bullets. So basically, when certified E&D balances are less than 500,000, there's no reduction. When it's, we'll say 500 to 750, it's reduced by 30. When it's 750 to $1 million, it's reduced by 60. And if it's over $1 million, we're reducing by 90. So if we use those figures, maybe also then layer on, unless rental revenues are so flush and everyone wants to rent it so much that, maybe trying to find some indicator, maybe if the rental revenue makes up what would be applied out of E&D, then it's taken as rental revenue, not, or something like that. I can play with that language.
Monique?
Brian, it says here that the stadium there's going to be a stadium stabilization account. If there's less than $40,000 in that account and we generate, if we generate less than $40,000 for rentals, what do we do in that case and there's no money in that account? Do we have to pay for it out of our operating budget? For that fund to maintain?
No, so basically we would say that the stabilization account is funded with the first 40,000. If we bring in 32,782, then we put that exact amount into the stabilization. So theoretically, ideally, the stabilization grows by 40 every year plus compound interest. But if it goes 40,000 one year, 10 the next, 30 the next, 40 the next.
At the end, the money is what?
Theoretically, then the end is the money. And I think a few years in, if we say, hey, look, we're not bringing in the revenue we thought we were, then we can go back to the drawing board. That doesn't change any of the money that we put aside. So the idea is we save at least the first 40,000 or up to that first 40,000, and then when it comes time to make those capital improvements on the stadium, the money is there. If the money's not there, I'm not as worried about the resurfacing of the track for $45,000 as I am about a $425,000 carpet.
The end of the MOU says it shall remain in effect until further notice. That could well say can be reopened at the request of any parties to the agreement. I mean, you might have a situation where a town has got a very big, what are we going to call a town stabilization fund?
They have free cash.
Free cash.
Yeah.
So
But they have a stabilization fund too.
if a town happened to finish up with a lot of free cash, then it may look odd if we're running down our equivalent to free cash if a town is sitting on a lot of it. So
Well, yeah.
that discussion may complicate things. But I think if it's understood that the MOU can be reopened at the request of any of the parties,
Mhm.
that creates an opportunity for further discussion.
I think our excess and deficiency fund is lower than some of our member towns right now. So yes, Linda?
I was actually surprised to see the E&D word even mentioned with how safeguarded you keep that, you know.
So was I.
With this, our efficiency, excess and deficiency being so low as it is, I wouldn't, until we got to $1 million, I think I would even say that the excess and deficiency, because it is what we use on a rainy day, I think until we get it to where we need it to be, I'm not sure even the 500 to 750 is acceptable to even dip into myself.
Well, we need to give some guidance right now because several people have said a minimum of 500,000. We need to give the administration some guidance as to what to put in that document.
I personally believe it should be from some of the money that for rental, because I think once it's done, I think that rental money will be sufficient to supply the towns with what they need.
So are you thinking rental should offset before E&D?
Precious E&D is to us. I think E&D shouldn't be touched, except for if we need it for our operating budget.
Can you how did that get in there? Was that you and Neil?
I just offered it up. I'm just trying to get rid of all of it.
I know, that's
Yeah. No, I will say around the table, the term kept coming up, it's our money, and that was the town speaking.
Our excess and deficiency is our money, is their money?
Which technically, if the towns are funding the district, when we have overage and it's certified as overage, they have free cash, we have excess and deficiency. It's the town's money. You can't, I mean, I don't think we can effectively argue that point. So I would say that was the genesis of the discussion. It was Neil's suggestion. I think he said that publicly at the meeting as well. And certainly he was looking to ways to further reduce the assessment so that it can be funded within the operating budget rather than having it be a capital debt exclusion. I think there's a way that we could, with the limits that you suggested, saying that the limits are 5 to 750, 750 to 1 and over 1 point, I think I could find some creative way to safeguard, to basically say, all right, if we bring in 85,000 in rental and we're going to be putting 40 away in capital stabilization, and we've got 45,000 to further reduce the assessment, then we shouldn't touch E&D at all. That the E&D is the last. So if I'm hearing that as guidance, I'll kind of take that as a way, trying to find a creative way with Neil to structure that.
Dick?
Just one thing, instead of putting down a fixed amount, I mean, you've got $60,000 when it's 5 to 700. Instead, that's over 10%. So if we come in at 500,000, you're going to end up paying 10% up. Why don't you put a percentage not to exceed? You can start at 10% being the initial payment, and then not to exceed 12%. Let's say when it's between 50 and 700. That way, we'd only be paying $50,000 as opposed to $60,000.
So you're saying
as a minimum payment.
Okay.
I thought I heard people say 30,000 at 500,000. I thought that's what I heard.
I think what Dick is saying, and I agree, because 30,000 to come out of E&D when you only have $500,000 in there, what percentage is that? You're saying translate that
instead
into
of
a percentage.
Fixed dollar amount, you
because
do a percentage.
Yeah, because if you're taking 30,000 out when there's 500,000, or 30,000 out when there's 700,000, 30,000, it almost if you have 700,000, that 30,000 is a much smaller hit to your E&D than if you're down at the $500,000
Agreed, yeah.
mark. So
So it's a variable within each band,
Yeah.
and then it's safe to say, or is it safe to say, is it a correct statement to say then that the percentage, each threshold, the base percentage is a little bit higher?
yeah.
Yeah, based on the excess and deficiency.
So use a percentage instead of a dollar amount?
Yeah, I would think that would.
So do we bring this back to your next meeting?
Working on
Yeah.
With the, okay, yep.
Is there anything else other than, before we get to the scoreboard and the carpet, or?
I think there's just the scoreboard and the carpet
Okay.
discussion, and maybe another discussion that Brian has had. Family. I can get you into that without embarrassment, I think.
Yeah.
So let's go to the. It's now quite some time since Brian and I met the leadership of the Institution for Savings, where they made some proposals, and we really need some steer from the committee as to whether the proposals are acceptable. Brian?
So the pictures you have, I believe this was conveyed, but these are the renditions that Sal Canciello came up with in regards to the naming. So you'll remember when Christopher and I met with Mike Jones and Kim Rock from the institution, they proposed giving an additional $75,000 to bring the donation to $600,000. And in doing so, what they were hoping for was initially they were looking to put their name on the scoreboard. Big scoreboard, that's obviously a very high visibility area as people look at it the entire game. In their most recent discussions, what they were looking for is actually, now that we have a concessions building, and the committee has agreed to name it, it's Memorial Field at Institution for Savings Stadium, to have the name on the building. And then their hope is, they kind of saw this as, $25,000 to put the name on the building, $25,000 to buy a scoreboard, and they want no name on the scoreboard whatsoever, so that the scoreboard would say whatever we want. Home of the Vikings, Triton Memorial Field, Go Big Blue. I mean, we can have whatever we want. And then in addition to that, they also wanted to have a logo on the turf. So if you flip over the page, on the first page you can see where they're thinking, again, this is walking into the stadium. Bleachers would be to your left. If you were standing right here, you would be standing in the middle school would be on your left, looking into the field, so it would have the Institution for Savings emblems and logo. Again, in talking to Mike Jones and Kim Rock, they do not want anything gaudy. I think that's safe to say. They want something small and tasteful, and I mean, anything they do put their name on and have put their name on, they are very respectful of that. So naming on the outside, and then if on the back side of that page, it doesn't print out very well, but you can see along the edge of the carpet there where the logo would be. And as you continue to flip through, you kind of get a better sense of where, on the third page, you kind of have a better sense of where the logo would be. So the theory is the logo would be outside the football playing field and likely inside the outer line for the widest sports, which would be field hockey, soccer, lacrosse. And then on the back page, I think is probably the kind of the cleanest picture of where they are thinking the logo would be. This has not been, I can't say that these are to perfect scale. I don't think we've agreed an exact size. This was just Sal kind of figuring out where the outside lines would be and where it would fit.
And there would be one at each end of the field. No, just the one.
The last discussion we had was this was the primary area because this is going to be, if you remember, we don't have any blown back pictures, but down the other end, everyone's in the stands looking over this, and if you're sitting here in the stands looking out at the marsh, again, the scoreboard is now being moved from out in the main fields to over here. So you'd be looking out at the scoreboard, right past that logo the entire time.
Okay, so
We can
I
confirm that, and that may be, and if we have to make sure we confirm that. But that's certainly something that they're requesting. And also, I should mention, when we had the public hearing for the Conservation Commission, no, it was for the Planning Board, there were some folks that showed up from Caldwell Farm with concerns about the noise and the light. Bill Seymour was able to talk about the lights that we're putting in, the Musco lights and the dark sky technology, which is, it puts more light on the field and less glare. They had concerns about the drums for marching band, which I said we don't anticipate having, you know, band competitions any later than we do now, or games any later than we do right now. And the one other piece that she had mentioned was the loudspeaker. That right now, with the loudspeaker on the press box, basically pointing right out over the marsh, it just echoes right up the marsh when there's a PA with an announcer. The system we've looked at now actually puts the PA system in the scoreboard. So again, with the scoreboard kind of looking out at the marsh, to your far right corner, it's actually facing back towards you. So that will hopefully help the sound. Just so you're aware, in case you hear from any residents of Caldwell Farm, that is how we explained it.
Unless you live where Suzanne lives. Now you'll hear it.
No, I mean, we've heard that for years there, and it's actually very enjoyable. I mean, you hear the games, you hear the band. I mean, I think, I mean, at least my neighbors, it's never been an issue ever.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice hearing.
She did confirm she is a very early person to bed, so 9 o'clock is sometimes, yes, is sometimes problematic. But she was very, very nice and was appreciative of the efforts being taken. So this is certainly something, if we can have some guidance on. The bank is waiting. They have confirmed that the donation is solid. And the donation through TEF, again, they're making this through TEF, can be made at any point in time.
So you would like us to vote as to whether or not we approve of the institution logo approximately in this location? Could we have a motion to approve the Institution for Savings logo as shown in this picture?
I'll make a motion to approve that logo where it is.
And Monique, second. Is there any discussion?
I just didn't have a chance to say. We talked at the district communication meeting. How long will this? We talked about maybe if another company wants to come in and put a logo on the field. How long will this initially be on the field? Because they do have their name outside the stadium. And if there's a new sponsor or something that wants to come up, how long did didn't we put a time limit on or something in that?
We asked, but we never had an answer.
What the bank has said is that they are investing in this, and they're not going to allow a situation to occur where we finish up with a deteriorating stadium. And I think that is the kind of long-term view that they're taking of their relationship with us and the stadium.
Okay.
I don't believe there was a time frame. When the original donation was accepted and the agreement was to name the stadium, I don't believe there was a 25-year statute or 20-year statute. But again, as Christopher said, I think that the investment that they've shown and the commitment that they've shown, that if their name is outside and on the carpet, I mean, certainly at 14 years, we're going to need to replace the carpet. And I believe Mike's words, quote unquote, were we're going to be there to make sure that the funds are available to keep it looking like it does today. Or it will, not like it does today.
Yeah.
Please, no.
Any other discussion? Dina?
Having been involved with this from the beginning, I do have a little bit of concern. I mean, I appreciate everything the bank is doing. I truly do. And I know that they will stand behind this 100%. The only concern I have, putting it on the carpet, I think is a great idea. I have some concern about it being on the outside of the building. I'd like to see Triton's name on there, not just the Viking logo. I mean, yes, you'll know when you come onto the campus where you are, but that's my only concern, really.
So you don't mean removing institution for savings, but adding Triton's name? Is that what you mean?
Well, yeah, I liked before when we were looking at, what were we looking at earlier, where it said Triton Track and Field Stadium or whatever was written on here before. I just, or, I don't know. I'd rather see it only on the carpet. And I appreciate the fact that they don't want to put anything on the scoreboard. I think that's great. But I don't know, that's just my concern.
The other side of the opening?
Nothing's been determined yet. Again, we're talking about small potatoes in regards to costs. As far as, I mean, we could have signage, the signage that's up in the middle, that's the T with the Viking, that could say Triton Memorial Stadium. There could be a Viking over on the left wall. I mean, we can certainly. So I guess my question would be, are you suggesting that the name Institution for Saving Stadium does not exist on the outside of the building, or that also something with Vikings, the Triton Viking name, Memorial Field, also exists with that?
If I had my preference, I would only have it on the carpet and have, you know, Triton Memorial Field at Institution for Saving Stadium rather than just Institution for Saving Stadium on here. I think that would be a fair compromise to put on the outside. You know, and to your point, Linda, or your question about what's going on the other side, I wouldn't want to have something on both sides. You don't want it to look too busy. It's a nice building that is being proposed, and I don't know.
I suspect the discussion's been going on too long to change that.
So you think it needs to stay on the outside as well?
I think there's a very clear expectation that it'll be on the outside.
Well, I agree that it might look busy on the left, but even where the T in the Viking head is, the top of the T could say Home of the Vikings or something. But I would like to see Triton, not just a T in the Viking helmet.
Well, we can have some
without
mock-ups
removing
made.
Institution for Savings.
And you remember on the other side, it says Triton. I don't have a picture here, but on the other side of the building, where the roof is tall, it literally says Triton Vikings in huge letters on the inside.
But one suggestion, I think, Dina, you said Triton Memorial Field at Institution for Saving Stadium.
Even if it said that.
Yeah.
We can work on that.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor? Opposed? None? Thank you.
Okay, just one more update on another potential donation. There is a donation that's in the works. The donor wants a family name. We had initially talked about the press box as another naming possibility. It's kind of the last vestige of really...
Or the concession stand.
Well, yes, I just don't think there's a big naming opportunity there, because now it's going to say Institution for Savings.
No, on the other side of the concession stand.
So there's potential there, but what the press box was one very prominent, very high and very visible area. In the early stages, we had talked about $200,000, $250,000 for a very prominent naming right. This individual wants to donate $50,000 and would like it on the press box. Or the scoreboard, which obviously is tricky now because we've said to the bank, we really like, obviously we also really like the concept of having the scoreboard be just Vikings, whatever we want it to be. So I would say that's in process, but just so that you're aware, there is another potential donation there, and especially with the delay of this project going out to not even bidding this project to 10 months from now and starting the construction a year from now, that gives us another full year to potentially find another potentially large-scale donor that may be interested in having their name up on the scoreboard. I'm sorry, on the concession, on the
press box.
It's almost Friday. So just so that you're aware of that.
I think it would be helpful to have some guidance as to what kind of figure you think we should be talking about, because I certainly feel that yes, 50,000 is 50,000, but to have that on the press box, what should we be looking for? Particularly, as Brian says, there may be as the project gets some impetus, if we get the votes, people may then come forward with better offers.
Well, I mean, the Institution for Savings is donating well over $500,000 just for this and a little imprint on the carpet. So $50,000 to have probably the equivalent size lettering on the press box. I mean, really?
Yeah, Dina?
Go ahead, Mary. 'Cause
Although I'm grateful for any donation whatsoever, but now we're getting into a different animal with names.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I'm grateful for any donation, but I think 50,000 for the press box. I think we need to come up with a list of potential naming items and potential amounts, because a press box is really noticeable, and I think that requires a larger donation for something like that.
Yeah, you could do it in a yearly basis. If 50,000 is the low point, if you don't get any higher bidders than that, say, okay, we'll put it on a type of a flag, name on a flag, and we'll attach it so that we don't have to paint it every year, and we'll put it on for one full year, you know, which would encompass football, all the sports that's played there, and then go back the following next year and say, okay, you want to give us another 50 or?
You need an electronic billboard.
Dina?
All of those things had been discussed early on. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, I do believe we came up with a suggested list and the amounts for what was going to be allowed. And to your point, Dick, we did come up with having temporary signage, you know, on that plastic-coated material that we could put around there. I can certainly dig up my notes and find out what that
document,
yeah, I know you have it too, but I mean, so all of that's been discussed, and maybe we need to bring that forward so the whole committee can take a look at that. I know it was presented to the committee initially, but maybe we need to look at that again. Yeah.
2012.
I think the fact that the press box is the next biggest piece, that if we accepted a $50,000 for a permanent naming of that piece, that's it. You know, there's not going to be anything any larger. Any other? Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda, to note that co-op arrangements are being made with the Clark School in Rowley, which is recognized by the MIAA, to enable its students to participate in our non-cut athletics program. We'd like a motion that the Clark School be charged $400 a student for participation in the Triton athletics program.
I'll make a motion that the Clark School be charged $400 a student for participation in the Triton Athletics program.
Do we have a second on the motion?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Wait.
Go ahead, Monique.
Go ahead, Monique.
How many students are we talking about?
I don't know. I think there'll only be a small number. I remind you that we're part of a swimming co-op with Georgetown and Newburyport. We're part of a ski co-op that I think involves one of our students at the moment. Our first year volleyball was done on a co-op basis, but we have such a lot of students now wanting to play it that it won't be a co-op next year. It'll be it's a small school.
Is $400 the cost of what to us?
We charge $350 for our students.
Can hear you.
Oh, what is the cost? Oh, what is the cost to a system to have a student participate?
Varies sport to sport.
Yeah.
But again, roughly, and we're a little bit heavy, the concept when the fees were introduced was a 50-50 split, general fund and fees. We're probably more in the 52-4% is being covered by the district, and 46-47% covered by fees. I know a lot of people think, you know, it's cross country is cheap because you're just running through the woods and it's a pair of shorts and a tank top, but it's actually when you're talking about transportation and game officials, that's where the costs are. So we know swimming and hockey and athletics or football is more costly just because of number of coaches and ice time and pool time, but the rest are
We're absorbing 50% of the cost for these students, these private school students, to participate in our athletics.
Well, no, because
Okay.
we would have marginal costs. We already have the cost to run
Okay.
the team, and they would be participating in non-cut sports. So we'd still have the officials, the transport. We wouldn't be increasing our costs, other than some administration in dealing, making sure we've got good liaison with between our system and the Clark School.
I think you think of it like a school choice student. If we bring in 2 students in grade 3 and 3 in grade 4, and we put 1 in each classroom at a particular grade level, we don't have to put a new teacher, or we have an extra set of materials. So with it, there's no significant cost there.
Robin?
My concern is that there is a proposal in next year's budget to raise the cost of athletic fees above $400 for some sports. And I'm assuming those, is the swimming a non-cut? Because I don't, it's just, I need to know what are the cut and the non-cut, because I just wouldn't want to see a Clark student paying $400 and a Triton swimmer paying $450, or a hockey player paying $550. So I think that it should be at least minimum what our students are paying if it falls into a non-cut but more expensive sport.
I think this was initially proposed prior to those being voted. So this has been a discussion ongoing. So I think we could easily say that it's $50 more than whatever the fee is for that sport. But to confirm that none of our sports are currently cut sports. That's my understanding. They're cut sports. We don't have the numbers coming out to be cut
They have
sports.
to cut them.
And we came into a situation with volleyball because we had the co-op and a significant number of students came out. But the idea that there is not that huge number of students coming from the Clark School.
Any other questions? Dina?
What about transportation from the Clark School here? Do they cover that? Okay.
Their
good.
responsibility.
Any other questions? Mary?
What about insurance? Would they be insured through us?
If we have an official co-op like we do with a Georgetown student, or they are officially participating in Triton athletics, and the magic question comes down to, are they covered? And it is if they're legally participating as a student in our programs. So if it's district run and they're legally participating through some vehicle meaning a system, a structure, then they are covered, absolutely, and we are covered.
Any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed, none? Thank you. Moving along to the report of the superintendent of schools, Mr. Farmer.
I won't keep you long. In the middle of my non-routine schedule, you'll see there's some reference there to ASME negotiations and food service negotiations. I think we're ready for P&N to come together to start work on that. Of the 3 bodies that we've been talking to, I think that it's very straightforward. One of them, I forget which one, asked us to think about something that was a little different than we do now, and we have some homework to do on that. But I think we've got to a point where P&N can make progress. You'll see that I've been in touch with the superintendent of the Whittier Regional Vocational Technical High School regarding the enrollment of out of region students when some of ours can't get in. I haven't had a response yet. You have information on the high school physical education waiver there. Senior appointments, very pleased to see that Amy Pasquarello has been appointed principal of East Gloucester, not because it's East Gloucester, but she's very good at what she does. And you'll see there's an appointment there to her position. Beyond that, you've got your usual reports. If you have questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
Any questions for Mr. Farmer? Dina?
I think Paul had one.
Oh, go ahead,
Oh,
Dina.
I'm sorry, Paul.
Go ahead, Paul. I talk all the time.
Go, Paul.
I just wonder, Mr. Farmer, I maintain, I've told you in an email, but I maintain that the PE waiver should be going through the policy subcommittee.
You did, and I respectfully disagreed with you. This is about determining whether or not participation in an MIA-sanctioned sport is an adequate substitute for what a student would pursue in school. And those of us who are familiar with those matters, I indicated who was involved, believe that that is a reasonable thing to do.
I get the sense that this is being quickly moved on, and I don't know why.
It's been around for quite some time. We have a very full agenda in terms of all the things we're trying to move on at the present time. Clearly, as I indicated in, I think, at least 2 meetings, one of them in writing, that it would impinge upon the number of positions reduced at the high school. And so we needed to, if we were going to do it, we needed to make students aware of it, because very recently they've been enrolling in courses next year. This is posted on the high school website, or through the Aspen part of the district website.
On the first paragraph, if you will, it says that the state of Massachusetts requires students to be offered physical ed. Is that the case, that they're required to be offered, or they're required to participate in phys ed?
There's a national report that was published, I think, in 2010. I believe I have it here, which specifically references it's a report called Shape of the Nation, published in 2010. Its subtitle is The Status of Physical Education in the USA, conducted by the National Association for Sport and Physical Education and the American Heart Association. And the section on Massachusetts says that the state permits school districts or schools to allow students to substitute other activities for their required physical education credit. Local school officials have discretion to determine whether and how a student, particularly at the high school level, may meet the physical education requirement.
So you've referenced a federal study, but what does the Massachusetts law require? That's what I'm asking.
The law talks about physical education at all grade levels. It's another aspect of the law which is often honored in the breach. Gloucester High School has 1.5 physical education teachers for a school of that size. We are not reducing the opportunity of physical education. We're simply saying that if you participate fully in an MIA sanctioned sport, that is the equivalent of a credit for physical education.
And that would be for a semester?
Yes.
And so what happens when somebody plays a winter sport? Which semester does that fall into?
They'd not be in PE in that semester.
Which semester? I'm saying the winter sports straddle the semester, is my understanding.
Yes, well, it will count as a semester, because the hours involved in participating in a sport are far greater than the hours spent in a class.
And what is this doesn't reference an injury in any way, this waiver here. What happens when a student gets injured?
Well, if they're injured, they wouldn't be able to participate in PE anyway. If there's some other reason why they cease playing in participating, then they go into a PE class.
And so there are grade requirements in order to participate in the sport.
Can you say that again?
My understanding is there are certain grading requirements that you need to keep in order to participate in a sport.
Correct.
And so what happens if the student falls below that?
Goes to a PE class.
Okay, and he goes back to a PE class that the teacher has had no contact with him all semester.
That's correct.
And how many other school districts in our area do this?
Well, I can tell you that Danvers High School, Ipswich High School, and Manchester Essex High School locally all have waivers. We did ask for advice from a number of districts, some of whom replied, some who didn't. Others that have waivers: East Bridgewater Junior Senior High School, Malden High School, Oakmount Regional High School, South Hadley High School, Seacon High School, and the Joseph Case High School in Swansea. Wilmington High School is currently considering a waiver.
Are you concerned at all about the non-physical aspects of the PE education that the students might not get if they just play a sport? I mean, the teaching and the drugs and alcohol policy and all that.
We don't have that. One of the reasons why I brought that wellness policy to you was to recognize that we have some big gaps in our current comprehensive health education policy.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but the gaps in that health and education policy are typically filled by PE teachers, aren't they?
Many do, but if you look at the draft policy that you have approved as a basis of consultation, it talks about the contribution of other staff. Not all PE teachers are very familiar or would be comfortable with, for example, teaching sex education.
Your turn, Dina.
Thank you. I also agreed with you, Paul, and wanted to meet with the superintendent this afternoon, which I did because I wanted to discuss this. It's not that I don't agree with the waivers, because I do. I think it is a good idea, but you know, especially hearing your questions, Paul, I do think that since this is a pilot program this year, it should go to policy to see if this is something that we will continue. My concern was, as I expressed to the superintendent today, was that our policy is something that parents could go to and say, well, why wasn't my child allowed to participate in this program if they didn't know about it? So my concern is the communication piece, making sure that all parents are aware of juniors and seniors, that this is available to them. It's just seniors for this pilot, correct?
It's just seniors and just our school sports. The information is on the website. We can certainly communicate with all families tomorrow if you feel that will be appropriate, so that all families are aware that there is a choice.
I think that would be wise. And Paul, just to again answer some of your questions, I did look back at my notes from the Wellness Committee, and apparently this was from September of 2011. Waivers had been granted to students in the past on a case-by-case basis. That's according to guidance. And to your point about what other things happen in a PE class, when we were discussing that, it said that option be limited to juniors and seniors, since PE classes for freshmen and sophomores include valuable team building exercises. So that's why I think as a pilot program, this is great for this year. I think that there's a need for these students who are at least two-season athletes anyway to take other electives or AP courses, whatever their interest might be. And I applaud them for doing that. But I do think if this is going to be something that we are going to continue with, I hope that policy does look at this and that it becomes more formalized in our graduation requirement policy.
Could I say I don't believe it's a policy issue?
Yes.
It's an well, respectfully, I disagree with you as a matter of principle.
I mean, I've been thinking a lot about this, and the fact that you read the document that you did that says it is the purview of the administration to make the determination what constitutes PE. I initially felt, too, that this is seemingly a policy change, but we have allowed waivers in the past. I also think that if the committee, looking at what the waiver allows for right now, not everything has to come through subcommittee. It can be handled right here in full committee right now. If the committee, as a communication tool, would like to vote to support this as a pilot program and then review it next year, I think there's some credence to that, as opposed to it not at all being talked about and reviewed by the full committee. There are plenty of times in finance sub we're under the gun for time and we just bring it to the full committee, and nothing says it has to go through the subcommittee before the full committee. The fact that PE covers other things, I'm satisfied that those are covered their freshman, sophomore, and junior year, because we're only right now talking about 12th grade, and they're not even required PE the second half of the year. It's only half of their senior year that it's a state requirement. My question, though, is a student who plays a spring sport and does not play a fall and winter sport and applies for the waiver, and let's just say they get to the spring, we're already, I mean, my daughter falls into this, but so I'm just thinking about tennis, for example. She does not play a fall and winter sport. She may apply for the waiver, she may not, I don't know, but the spring semester will have begun before she ever even enrolls in her spring sport. And then let's just say something it's just tricky for the spring sports, because we could very easily get into a situation where we don't satisfy that PE requirement. If a child says they are going to enroll in a spring sport, they do, or they drop out halfway, they've already missed the chance to make up enough PE classes. That's just like one of the pitfalls I see.
The
The
discussion we've had is that guidance has a heavy responsibility to make it clear to students that they run that risk of not meeting the graduation requirements.
So graduation's at risk.
Mm-hmm.
I think people need to be very aware of that.
Well, it was an important part of our discussion, I assure you.
That's why I think if I can just back up to the Wellness Committee things, we were looking at it possibly a junior-senior opportunity so that we wouldn't run into that particular problem necessarily. Doesn't necessarily solve that problem, but if they have that opportunity in their junior year, maybe in your case, your daughter who plays tennis might want to take advantage of it then without putting her senior year at risk in graduation. Yeah. Just something to consider.
Suzanne?
I just have a question moving forward. Do you foresee, like, possibly, if this works well, incorporating kids who are in, say, gymnastics who are not part of this?
Yes, that was part of our discussion.
Okay.
We've started small because we can verify, because our coaches are our employees, and they will verify whether or not a student has participated. We talked about things like equestrianism, figure skating, possibly. Obviously, there are a number of sports that people may be involved
That's
with.
a possibility in the future?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
There'd be two members of the Triton Committee would be remiss if I didn't ask if possibly marching band or winter guard could be considered. I know it's not MIAB, but just consider it in the future, because they are out there doing equivalent things to, say, from throwing a javelin or something like that. So that was just two little girls.
Marching band, color guard, and the ROTC are typically included, and we could look at that.
This is just,
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
obviously not this year, just something to consider in the
Yes.
future. Thank you.
All of those things were discussed when we first came
Right,
up
I
with
just
this.
didn't know
yeah.
if things have changed with
Right.
this policy. I just want to make sure that was out there.
Well, could we support this as a pilot program for the upcoming year?
I mean, I think it's worthwhile to take a vote on it.
Yes,
too.
that's what I'm
okay.
asking. All right, could we have a motion to support the proposal on PE waiver, thank you, as a pilot program for the upcoming school year?
So moved.
Second? Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. Thank you. Next, we have some subcommittee action items.
There is actually one substantive item that I circulated.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And that is the school calendar for next year.
I
Were
didn't
you
forget
gonna
that.
get to that?
Well,
Okay.
we could do that now. That's fine.
There
is a supplementary agenda item to approve the 2015-2016 school calendar, which now includes professional development early release days. You have that. Could we have a motion to approve the 2015-2016 school calendar as presented?
So moved.
Could we have a second? Second from Linda, thank you. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous? Thank you very much. Subcommittee action items. Finance Subcommittee met on March 17th. Robin, do you have?
Nothing beyond the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you. Policy Subcommittee. The Policy Subcommittee may have a recommendation on an amendment to the student attendance policy. See the highlighted text before, to consider amending the policy to clarify the responsibilities of teachers when families take their students on vacation when school is in session. Excuse me, the proposed amendment is highlighted below. In circumstances in which families take their student on vacation when school is in session, there shall be no requirement for teachers to teach the student the curriculum missed while on vacation. Linda, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Well, we in the policy committee amended this. Mr. Farmer, do you have that?
Yes, I do. The policy subcommittee recommends that you add to the highlighted text the following text. The teacher will take steps to ensure that the student knows what was covered during the vacation and is provided with any supplementary support materials.
Because we felt that the student shouldn't be punished because the parents were taking a vacation.
So we could knows there is aware of, not knows, understands, can do.
My concern over this is only kind of the spirit of it, that I would never expect a teacher to feel like they had to carve out part of their teaching time to take a child aside or do anything like that. But I'm also concerned that there would ever be any kind of attitude that you missed it, too bad I can't talk about it. You know, I mean, a teacher, I would think, would always want to be available to follow up if the student is earnestly taking work with them, trying to make up and come back and just trying to understand it. I just wouldn't want this to be an out to say you weren't here, you know, you missed my coverage of that. I know that might even sound horrible bringing that up. Like, hopefully there would never be a teacher that did that, but
I would hope so too, that the added language was
that helps.
An attempt to reflect your concern.
We did have discussions on that same topic. So that's why we were trying to word this the best way we could.
I like the amendment.
So you'd be adopting this as a first reading?
Yes, could we have a motion to adopt the language as amended as a first reading?
I'll make a motion to adopt the language as amended.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion? Dick?
I didn't get a chance to join in. Is there any timeline on this? I mean, do we envision parents taking kids out of school for a whole week or a few days, or have we had that happen?
Oh, yes.
Really? Yeah. Okay.
Yes. There are some students that are taken out for multiple weeks. Dina?
Can I just ask, I did pull the policy, and I guess I'm unclear as to, I mean, what prompted this, if anything, because it does say under unexcused absences, vacations taken during the school year without the prior approval of the principal. The school committee does not condone such absences. So to me, it looks like we already have it in here that if you're going to be taking your child out for an extended amount of time, you need to have approval from the principal. I'm just unclear as to why we're
in many cases that approval is not requested.
So it goes as an unexcused absence?
Yes, but this is about what is the obligation of the teacher, given that that is the case. And there are families who really expect the teacher then to teach.
Does the student come in early, ask for extra time, or stay late if the teacher's available? Does he set up appointments to review?
The teacher, at their discretion, could certainly agree that, but this is saying there isn't an obligation on the teacher to teach. There is an obligation here now to make sure the student knows what was missed, what was covered, and to provide any materials that will have been used in class. But the student's essentially on an independent study.
But aren't we punishing the student then for a decision that their parent has made to take them on vacation? If we're not...
That is an argument that can be made, but equally you're punishing the teacher if the teacher is expected to teach what has been missed at the whim of the family.
Okay, but I guess then we need to go back to why getting prior approval from a principal. Maybe we need to make that known. I mean, again, we're not encouraging parents to do that, but I might be the only one, but I think that in this day and age where families are so overscheduled, if there's an opportunity for family time, and again, I'm hoping it's not multiple weeks, that I think that's important, and the child may get valuable lessons traveling somewhere else. I mean, we just talked about Shannon was saying about the visual and performing arts going for a long weekend in New York. There's value there. I think travel is a valuable experience.
But there's a difference between a school-sanctioned activity and parents simply taking children out for a week or two.
Oh, I agree with you. That's why I'm saying we need to maybe look at how we can more strongly encourage approval from a principal, because maybe if a principal knows they're going to, say, France or whatever, they might suggest activities or whatever. And not to put more burden on the administrators either, but I think we need to try and take advantage of any learning opportunity we can, and that does include travel with family.
I don't disagree about travel. It's difficult to say, but some families feel very entitled.
I just want to bring everybody back to all we're asking. We're not doing the whole policy over tonight. It's just this particular couple of sentences. That's what we're approving or not approving. If we would like to revisit the policy, then that can certainly be done. But right now, we just need to address this sentence or two. Is there any more comment on this particular sentence and the addition that Christopher read?
Well, I mean, my personal feeling is any family that pulls their child out that has every intention of making sure they don't miss if they're going on a special trip, and I completely agree with Dina, because now as I get to the end of my high school time with my kids, I regret sometimes that I was so beholden to the school schedule that I was afraid to take advantage of some pretty maybe neat opportunities because we're so darn worried about missing a certain day of school. If a family is going to take a child out of school for a situation that just may not be able to happen over Christmas vacation or summer vacation or when it's our prescribed vacation time, if that family and those children make an effort to meet with the principal, meet with the teachers ahead of time, let them know they're going, make every effort to get the work, my hope is that when they do that independent study and they come back, if there are questions, the teacher would help them as if they were out sick or whatever. But no, that they wouldn't be expected to stay after school just to reteach the lesson or something like that. So again, to me, it's more about the spirit of law rather than the letter of the law, that this doesn't give someone, the freedom to say, sorry, you were gone. I can't even talk about it.
You want to read, perhaps let's read this again, so just to remind us.
The addition is the teacher will take steps to ensure that the student knows what was covered during the vacation and is provided with any supporting materials.
Supplement is helpful for me.
Would that be prior to the student not being there? In other words, he could get the assignments, the reading assignments?
I don't think so, no.
No?
I mean, they could request, and I think, quite honestly, teachers' response will depend very much upon the general attendance of the students, whether the student's a good student, does the work, that they will probably have a different view than if students are just whisked out of school and then come back and have an expectation that they're going to be taught.
Do these parents call up every day with a different excuse, or do they just say, the kid's gone? I mean, how do they
I think we need to vote on these. We need to vote on these two sentences.
I'm just in support of this because I think that when those situations do happen, it's very disruptive to the class, especially if there's group work, if they're relying upon other students, if the students come back and they're in certain types of lab groups, language groups, projects. It's very disruptive to the other students, and it's very unfair. So I'm in agreement with this, and in the spirit, like you said, of course you're going to give them the material, a good teacher would. But I think there's some type of, sometimes, not all times, I think there's some entitlement that, you know, the student is gone for a week, they come back and they're like, I don't understand this, and they're disruptive to the class because they don't understand, and they're frustrated because they haven't been there. And sometimes the parents feel that it's your responsibility to catch the student up in that class period. And in reality, when you have 23 other kids, I think that's hard for teachers to do that. A lot of these teachers have websites, they have materials online, and of course they would provide those to them. But I don't think it's mean-spirited. I think it's just what expectations are. If you go away for 2 weeks and you come back and you don't necessarily put the time in on vacation or whatever, and you end up getting a D, then what do you expect? I mean, you're not there. You're not in the community of the classroom. You're not participating with other students. It's a learning community in your classroom, and if you're not there, you're going to miss things. You're just not there. To learn, you come to school. And I think that has to be expected, that that little piece of that community in your classroom is going to be lost. It just is. You've lost 2 weeks of a community in your classroom. And I'm in agreement with this, and I'm in support of this. So that's my personal opinion.
If I could give you an example of a slightly different situation, we have some families whose work here is seasonal and go south because they can work south and they can't work here in the winter. And when they approach us to ask the question, well, how can the student be in a position that when they do come back, they're still in touch, and we do spend time with those families, recognizing their particular circumstances, to do what we can to make sure that the student has the opportunity to use their time productively when they're out of the state, so that they're not disadvantaged any more than they really have to be because of the family's circumstances. That's very different, but I'm illustrating that as a way in which we do respond to particular family circumstances.
Is there any more discussion? Paul?
I just have one more very short suggestion. If you want to make it clear to the parents in the district, add one sentence to it, which would read, any parent that takes a child out of school for vacation during non-scheduled school vacation time is expected to privately finance any tutorial upon their return.
There you go.
That may cut across a free and appropriate public education. I think we'd need to get some legal advice on that from a different lawyer.
Take the kid out of school, you're on the hook.
Could we have a vote on this policy as an amendment as a first reading? All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous? Oh, I'm sorry. Right. Our next regular meeting is May 13th, which right now sounds like a long way off. But could we have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you very much.